Richard, this has been an amazing kind of opening to the project with the Scottish Urban Past doing the work that they did and looking at the cellars and things. Could you just tell us a little bit about that and what this means for the project?
Well, I think what we've got here is, if you like, the first tangible connection to the James I story. We've got a bit of building that is likely to relate to the friary in which James was assassinated in February 1437. And so, we've really now got, it's not quite the bloodstains on the floor kind of idea, but it is part of the building complex. And so somewhere around about here, the king was murdered.
What's so important about that? I mean, we talk about kings being murdered, but quite a few of the Scottish kings came to a sad demise. What about James I then? What was so important about him?
Well, James I, partly it is just the absolute horror of what happens. He's the first one of the medieval kings to come to a sticky end in this particular way. And what you're looking at is, well, in some people's eyes, it is legitimate resistance against tyranny. James is seen as a bad king. But the myth and legend, if you like, that is built up about James is, he's the lawmaker king. He's the man who comes back and he sorts out all these turbulent barons, and he's the poor man's king. That, he would protect them all. And so you've got this counter tension between good cop, bad cop in the one man.
Yes.
And that on the one hand, he is murdered because he is oppressive, a tyrant, and on the other hand, he's murdered because he's clamping down on nobility.
Yeah, he sounds like a 21st century ruler, really, doesn't he? There's a lot that sounds recognisable about James I.
Yeah, he was somebody who recognised the power of propaganda. He very, very much, he would have had the image consultants in. He's investing huge amounts of money in, building the Charterhouse here, for example. And that's a very, very visible symbol of his kingship. And it's like Trump Tower or something like that.
You've mentioned a few things. You said about the building here. So you talk about it as a priory, but I understand it was actually more than that. It was the royal apartments, is that right?
There is a tradition in the Middle Ages, quite common throughout Europe, that you'll get kings and rulers taking over parts of monastic complexes, usually because they've got space, and then they gradually start to add on. So, if you go to Dunfermline, for example, the remains of what's referred to as Dunfermline Palace, that originated as the guest house of the Abbey. Holyrood House in Edinburgh originated as the guest house of the Augustinian Abbey there. And the king starts to develop it into a palace. And so what happens here is at the Blackfriars, the Dominican friary, the king's begun to develop a residence because he's starting to turn Perth into almost a capital. Right,
okay, so would it have felt like, you think about monasteries and things like that, you think about quiet and things, would it have been a little bit like it is tonight? Would it have had the kind of sense of vibrancy and things?
Maybe when the king was there.
Yeah.
Outside that time, it is functioning as a monastery. So, it would have the peace and tranquility. But you've got to remember that you've got the church and the cloister area, but there are other buildings, and there's precincts, and there's gardens. And we know, well, at least according to the stories about James, that there's a royal tennis court here. I don't mean it's a king's tennis court, it's the game of royal tennis.
Yes.
So like the one that survives at Falkland.
Yes.
So he's got a tennis court.
So there is a story, though, related to his demise, isn't there? Tell us about that.
According to the storyline, emphasis, this is the storyline. James had spent most of the previous day playing tennis, and he kept on losing tennis balls down through this drain, and this fed into the main sewers. And when we say sewers, nowadays sewer pipes are like this. This is a passageway that people could actually walk through and clean it out. And so he got so annoyed about losing the balls down into this drain, he instructed the opening to be blocked up.
Okay.
So the following evening, he's in his apartment, and they hear the sound of, clearly armed men coming into the building. He tries to bar the door, the drawbar for the door has been removed. Somebody on the inside is basically setting him up. And then brainwave, he can escape down through the floor into the sewer. So he goes down there thinking he'll be able to escape out through the drain. He's blocked it. So he's trapped down there. Now the assassins come in, they can't find him, and they're on the point of leaving. James is on the point of coming back up out of the hole in the floor. One of them hears him, comes back in, and then that's the end. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's one of the great what-ifs of Scottish history, isn't it? If he hadn't. I hope Auntie Murray is going to be listening to this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we have here the Blackfriars, but the project that you're working towards is a major project around the Charter House. Could you tell us a little bit about the Charter House? What was the difference between Blackfriars and the Charter House?
The Blackfriars, that's Dominican friars. And they're what's called a mendicant order, which means that they make their living by going out and begging. They survive on alms. Now, they're a bit richer than that. People are giving them property and things like that, but they are very, very much an order of preachers, and their role is to be in towns and to be providing services, preaching to people, serving the religious needs of the community.
Right.
So they are an order that is in the world. Charterhouse is the anglicisation of the Latin Carthusia, which is the name of the order. So they're the Carthusian order.
And they exist today?
Yes, they exist today. The mother house is still there in France, over in the foothills of the Alps, near Grenoble, a place called Le Grand Chartreuse. Now, they are an enclosed order.
What does that mean?
Well, they're living in a monastery, and they rarely leave it. They can leave it with the prior's express permission, but normally they would be in the monastery. Now, most monastic orders, the monks live in a dormitory. That's where they sleep. They eat in common in a refectory. They come together in two other places, the church and the chapter house. Carthusians are different.
Okay.
Each monk lives in his own little house with a garden. You've got a living room with a bed chamber, their own private latrine. Upstairs is a workroom.
Okay.
So they eat in these rooms. They'll only occasionally come together in a larger dining room. So they're spending their days withdrawn in prayer, doing intellectual work. So they're writing sacred texts and things like this. And they might be doing something like weaving.
Right.
And then they only come together in the church.
So what would have attracted James I to that? Because I believe he founded this. And what's unique about the Charter House here in Perth then?
Well, it's the only one in Scotland.
Okay.
But it's part of a big 14th and 15th century upsurge in interest in the Carthusian order. And it's because they're particularly pious. They are meant to have a hotline to God. And what he's doing is he is getting this onto the side of his family.
Right.
So they're saying prayers for him and prayers for the monarchy.